Bit of a special day here. I'm actually showing a pen that isn't mine. I usually feature my own pens, but this is a pen that is a beautiful Visconti Homo Sapiens Bronze Age. It's not my pen, but I'm going to just give you a little walk through this beautiful pen and talk about what I like about it, what I might not like about it, and a few features on it. So the first thing that strikes you when you see a Visconti is the clip. It's designed after a famous bridge in Florence, and they it's a really nice, elegant design. It identifies the brand right away. So as I said, this isn't my pen, and it came to me for a reason. An acquaintance of mine had this pen, and he noticed one little feature on the nib as he was writing, and it was a slight scratch. His writing style, like most people, use left to right, but then he often does a flourish to the left when he signs his name. And as he did that swoop to the left, he noticed it scratched. And when you have a nice, beautiful, expensive pen, you really want it to work well. And so I took a look at it, and I've a bit of experience. I'm not a professional by any means. He knows that. But I looked at it under a loupe, and I noticed there was a little burr on the nib, and so I think I've fixed the problem. Didn't take much, but when you look under a nib from different angles and different loupes, and you see a problem, sometimes you can just use a bit of micro mesh to soften it out. And I'm pretty sure I have it writing nicely now. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. So the first thing about this pen, it's made of lava, or I guess lava powder. It's when you see the body and the cap, it's lava from Mount Etna, and it's mixed with resin, and it's supposedly almost indestructible. It's very, very hard. And when you hold the pen, it's hygroscopic, so it absorbs some moisture from your hand into the lava. It breathes, essentially. So it's a nice, warm feeling. It's very comfortable for long writing sessions. Because it's made of essentially stone mixed with resin, it's not a light pen, but it's not so heavy that to be uncomfortable. It's a fairly good size pen. It's not, a small pen by any means, but it has a nice girth to it, so when you're holding it, it feels very nice. They've done some really nice things with it. It feels good when you're holding it. It's you're holding a pen, but it's not so overly heavy to be ridiculous. So this is the Bronze Age. The clip and the bands and the trim, everything is made of solid bronze, and really beautiful, really beautiful, beautiful job. And as you see on the finial, the Visconti logo, and really interesting capping system on this. It's not a twist cap, and it's not a pull cap. There's a little thing where you push in and then you turn, and as you look, you'll see these little grooves. So it's a combination, and that's a very actually I quite like this design of cap. Where it's like a push cap, but when you put it on and you do a little twist, and it locks in place, so it's not going to pop off. But it's not so, sometimes with a twist cap or a screw cap, a good one will just be like a single turn and then maybe a quarter, and the cap comes off. But some of them, they're quite long. It's not ridiculous, but this is a really nicely designed closure system, I have to be honest. And you know what? Visconti has some nice closing systems. There's a couple that a friend of mine has, and they're almost magnetic, so when you put the cap on, you can feel the cap being pulled down to the magnetic closure. And that's one thing I really like about Visconti, is that their attention to detail in their closure systems. And they have, yeah, and I don't know if any other companies are allowed to copy those, and they're probably not, but it's a really nice feature on the pens. Now then, let's talk about the nib. I think it's a beautiful nib. We won't try to get in focus. But for me, like, this is not a cheap pen. And it's a beautiful pen, and I can see why, I can't get that in focus. I can see why you would, this would be a grail pen for many people. It's in the grail category for me, really, because it's beyond my price range. But there's a couple things I noticed about this nib. First of all, was the little scratch that my acquaintance found. And also, if you look there carefully, one of the things I noticed was that the feed and the nib aren't set properly. The feed and the nib are slightly out of alignment. Now, if this was my pen, I would probably try to rectify that myself, but since it's not my pen, I'm not going to risk messing around with the feed and the nib for them, because it doesn't really seem to be causing an issue with the ink flow or the writing. But if you're paying a lot of money for a fountain pen, you want quality control from the manufacturer. So that's one of the things. Somebody's looking at these pens, testing them to see how they write, seeing how the nib looks. You should pick up the fact that the nib and feed are slightly out of alignment. Okay, so that's one of my main issues with the pen. If this were my pen, I'd probably figure out how to take the nib and feed out, but it's not. I'm not going to touch it. Sometimes it's better to leave things alone. Now it's one thing I noticed about the nib, it seems for a Western pen very fine, and almost like at first I thought, oh, that reminds me of like a sailor in some ways in its fineness, but the nibs are quite different. The sailor nibs, the one I have, is very hard, and this actually has a little bit of softness to it, I would say. I'm not going to call it a flex nib, but there's just a little bit of a spring to it, just noticeable. And the other thing is there's a bit of feedback in this nib. Very nice. It's not what I would call overly smooth, but sometimes I really like a certain, I love smooth nibs, but I do really also enjoy when a nib has intended feedback to it, and you can sort of get this little vibration. My Lamy 2000, for instance, has just a little bit of feedback to it, and it's a real pleasure to write with. There's just a little vibration that occurs, Sometimes when you're writing with fountain pens, there's these beautiful sensations that occur in your hand or your ear, or, you can just sense something, and it really improves the writing experience. And it's what makes fountain pens for me so fascinating, just the different ways each nib reacts to paper. And so anyway, as you write with this, there's just I can hear the nib on the paper, and I like that. So now I'm going to say that there's a slight bit of line variation in this nib. It's not a flex nib. Don't go pushing on it if you have one. It's not. I wouldn't push too hard. But also, there's some shading occurring in the ink. This is diamine Oxford blue, one of my favorite blues. And in this pen, it's quite different than it is in some of my other pens. You get dark areas, you get light areas, and it's quite attractive, right? Whereas I have a couple pens where I put it down, and diamine Oxford blue is this solid blue-black line, and it's very attractive. But this one seems to give some shading properties to the ink, and that's quite unusual. I was kind of surprised. My acquaintance had inked it up with a different one. I forget what he had in it, Robert Oster or something like that. And the pen, we had talked about it beforehand. There's no ink window on this pen, even though it's a piston filler. There's a piston knob here. You turn it, you pull out a rod. I'm not going to show you that. So it's a piston filler. And he also has a Mont Blanc, and it has an ink window in it. So you can always tell how much ink is in the pen. This one, unfortunately, it doesn't show you that. And as he said, he never really has any sense that it's about to run out of ink. He's writing along, and sometimes when you have a pen, you know it's about to run out of ink. You start noticing the line getting a little fainter or skippy or something like that, and you check your converter, and it's out of ink. I have to change it. Whereas this one, you can't really tell that you're running out of ink until it runs out of ink, and and I was like, I'm working on the nib, just smoothing it down a little. And so I was doing a lot of writing, and you like to learn a few things about you want to get acquainted with the nib, right, as you're working with it. And as I'm writing along, all of a sudden it was out of ink. It's like I had no, and just the way he described it, you're like writing, and all of a sudden you have no ink. And it would have almost been kind of nice if there was just a little ink window on there. So, and I'm actually a big fan of ink windows. I think they're a very attractive part of a pen. If done right, an ink window is a beautiful thing. And I don't know how you feel about that. How do you feel about ink windows? Right in the comments below, do you like ink windows? Do you hate ink windows? I like asking questions like that. They're fun to know. So yeah. Would I buy one of these pens myself? I probably, if I saved up for it, would. I probably would. It's a beautiful pen, very beautiful pen. And looking online, there's a couple other Viscontis that I really like. Like some of the colorful ones in this, in the same price range or even above, that are really nice. But what I would suggest, if you're buying this, and the seller offers you a nib tuning option, I would probably pay to have it tuned. My acquaintance had looked at some nibmeisters, and there was a big backlog, waiting times in Canada. So he just thought I could take a look at it and see what it was. And what I did was I just lightly went over it, with micro mesh back and forth. You wet the micro mesh and you just do it lightly, and then you test. You don't want to go hard on these things. And I also did a little bit of flossing. Just sometimes there's residue in between the tines from the manufacturing process. And when you get a new pen, give it a good wash, flush it. And so when the pen ran out of ink, I spent a little bit of time flushing the old ink out, and so it seems to be working as I do this motion. It's if you can hear that, it's a nice sound. It's a really nice sounding nib. I got to admit, that's one of the nice features about this pen. So as I do that, I'm not pushing hard here. As you do that, I don't feel the scratch that, as you go towards the left, before it would almost cut the paper, it would grab. And I don't feel that at the moment. And so I'm kind of happy with that. But yeah, if you're getting one of these pens and say there's the seller has a nib tuning service, pay a few dollars to have the nib tuned. I've heard from other people that sometimes Visconti nibs are, beautiful nibs, but they just need a little bit more care with tuning. Maybe they expect you to do that when you're buying it at the seller. I'm not too sure. I don't really actually know much about Visconti. It's an Italian brand, but so yeah, beautiful pen. Definitely a grail pen. And I hope my acquaintance enjoys it for many years to come. And you know what? This is one of those pens. I'll say it. It's an heirloom. You buy it now. This thing's going to last you a lifetime. Take care of the nib. Don't be gentle. the body is so durable and so beautiful. Uh, you know, take care of the nib, don't drop it. Things like that. This will be the kind of thing that you can pass down to your grandchildren. Um, so yeah, beautiful pen. Love it. Okay. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. And if you're not new to the channel, but you haven't already, I would love it if you subscribe. I'm really enjoying YouTube. It's a lot of fun. And I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much.